welcome to Daily Debrief brought to you by People's Dispatch. I'm Swastika, and today we'll discuss the killing of 3 Palestinians in the city of Nablus, the latest from Libya. We start from Palestine, specifically the town of Nablus. On Tuesday, Israeli forces killed 3 Palestinian men in what has been termed an assassination and an execution. The 3 men were members of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, which is associated with the ruling Fatah Party of Palestine. The killing led to widespread condemnation and anger across the occupied Palestinian territories. The Palestinian Authority has called for an international investigation. Now we have with us Abdul to tell us a little bit more about what happened. Abdul, if you could tell us what really happened in this incident, who were the people involved, and why were they targeted?
There are 2 versions, of course. As per the Israeli security forces version, Sinfen, the Internal Security Agency, led a clandestine operation in which they used the civilian bus to storm into a busy street in Nablus. And in broad daylight, they surrounded a car in which these 3 people were traveling, and they shot at them from outside. So if you see the picture of the car, which is there in media, the car is completely, there are a lot of holes in the car. It means that all the firing has happened from outside. Many rounds of firing has happened. And none of those 3 people had any time to basically respond to what is happening, it seems. The eyewitnesses account published in the media also says the same thing, that these people, the Israeli forces in civilian clothes, surrounded the car and started firing without any prior warning and anything. It basically shows a kind of a mafia kind of execution of certain people. The Israeli security forces are claiming that these people were involved. The 3 people were involved in different shootings against the Israeli security forces. But we should not forget that there is a long-standing agreement between the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli forces when it comes to security arrangements. So if they had to do anything, basically there was a proper legal process established according to the Oslo Agreement, which basically leads to Palestinian authorities intervening and then the Israeli forces taking off. So it means it's simply a extrajudicial killing without any consideration of the authority there, without any consideration of the law and order situation, and so on and so forth. So it's basically the arrogance of the occupation.
How does Israel justify such killings? In what manner does it justify it? And also, what are some of the policies that Israel uses to make such killings?
As I said before, that after the Oslo Agreement, there was a kind of understanding between the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian areas which are quote-unquote governed by the Palestinian Authority. If there is a security issue which is problematic to Israel, they will have to contact the Palestinian Authority, and Palestinian authorities will take action. In this case, basically what happened, that they violated that particular arrangement, and the Israeli forces intervened on their own without any regard to the Palestinian Authority. It basically shows that Israel post 2001, when the second Intifada happened, has adopted a policy of quote-unquote preemptive strikes against the possible terrorist threats. So that's how the Israelis are defining it, that these 3 men are were the possible threat to Israeli security, and hence Israel has the right to preemptive strike, which goes against the international law, and they have justified it for a very long time. That is how they justified it, and they're justifying in this case as well, which basically no international law recognizes such rights. Because Israel has international backing, because Israel is the occupying force and there is a lack of international intervention, Israel can get away with such blatant violations, claiming that they are the security threats. If there is a security threat, of course, the established legal procedure is to arrest them, to try them, and so on and so forth. But Israel never follows all those things. If you see, there is a policy called administrative detention, in which Israeli forces can arrest any Palestinian and keep them without trial for longer periods. So, or they can shoot anyone if they and claim later on that this is a security threat. We have seen many examples in last many years, particularly last year, when a mentally challenged person was killed in the name of security threat. The people traveling in car on the checkpoints were killed by the Israeli forces in the name of security threat. And all the post-facto investigations prove that none of those people who are claimed to be security threats were really any security threats. For example, in this case, in this particular case, none of these three men were ever implicated for any crime. So it's simply an arbitrary extrajudicial execution.
Stay with us, Abdul, because we'll come back to you for our next piece of news as well. We now go to Libya, where the House of Representatives is set to replace Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Dabeiba today. In fact, the new Prime Minister's name is set to be out by the time this episode comes out. This comes amid rising crisis and internal dissension in the country after elections planned for December were not held. Now, Abdul, back to you about this. Why does the parliament want to replace Abdul Hamid Dabeiba?
The basic reason they have given is, as per the interim agreement, when the interim government in the leadership of Abdul Hamid Dabeiba was established in February last year, it had a mandate, a clear mandate, that there will be a national elections on December 24. After that, the new government will take over. Since the interim government led by Dabeiba failed to execute its mandate, there is no reason for it to continue. One, this is the legal argument given by the Libyan parliament. But at the same time, there is also a political angle to it. As per the understanding at the time when the interim government was formed, Dabeiba was never to contest election. But when the presidential elections were announced last year, December, he declared himself to be one of the candidates in that election. Parliament argues, which is opposing Dabeiba's continuation, that this is basically a violation of the understanding of the UN-led understanding in the UN-led peace process, and therefore there is a breach of trust, and therefore Dabeiba should not continue as prime minister. So this is the legal argument and the political argument given by the Libyan parliament.
Also about the elections, the fact that they have not happened on time, are they likely to happen, in which case?
It seems unlikely. Last month, the parliamentary committee, which is assigned the job to hold the election, submitted in front of the Libyan parliament that they will not be able to hold the election for next 6 months at least. They needed 6 more months for holding the elections. And therefore, of course, it is quite clear that the parliamentary committee, which is assigned the job of holding the elections, is not prepared for it. One. The second thing is, because of the controversy surrounding Dabeiba's continuation and a new interim government coming in, that basically there is a potential that this particular conflict can prolong. And there are speculations that this may create a situation similar to what happened in 2014, when the UN-led initiative led to election, but the elections led to a division of the country into East and West. The parliament, which was elected, moved to Tobruk in the eastern part, and the UN-led recognized government remained in the West. So similar things may happen. That is the speculation given by people who are observing the Libyan political development. Therefore, this is the second thing. The third thing is the role of the UN, which was celebrated last year, which ultimately created the ceasefire, ended the armed hostilities, which were going on for last 10 years, and a kind of interim administration was created. That celebratory mode about the UN's role has basically been under question now, primarily because the international actors who are backing the UN initiative are divided. So US is basically supporting the immediate elections, but UN and US they are supporting immediate elections, but Russia and some other players who basically were on board in last year are opposing it at this moment. They are saying that this, under the leadership of the interim UN representative in Libya, the process should not move, because her role also, Stephen Williams' role is also under question. So given the international scenario, given the problems between parliament and the interim government, and the unprepared status of the committee which is assigned the job of holding the elections, I think it is difficult for us to see the Libyan elections anytime soon.
Well, thank you, Abdul, for joining us with those details. That's all we have time for today. We'll be back tomorrow with more news from across the world. Till then, keep watching People's Dispatch.